So it's finally time. The moment you've all been waiting for. The Magia, Etc. review. This is a highly anticipated video for some of the 2.8 thousand people who viewed the Magia record video. You guys killed it, so from now on we'll be making commentary and sometimes gameplay videos on Magia, etc. and possibly Madoka Magica altogether. First off on the list will be this review video for Magia, etc. I wrote down a lot of things, and I did a ton of grinding, non-stop, every day. I've even caught up on the story. So how about we quit stalling and get right into the Magia, etc. review. Spoiler warning, by the way. Since a lot of the people in this video are probably new viewers or subs, I'm going to explain how this is structured. We're going to talk about my observations, pros, cons, and suggestions. I'll start with the observations, talk about the positives, then talk about the negatives, closing off with suggestions. Simple. So let's talk about our observations. So first I observed that the game is structured very similarly to Honkai Star Rail. Turn-based, elemental weaknesses, lots of the inspiration for the combat was likely from Star Rail, but there are some different things. First of all, the weakness system has a system where every unit can reduce the weakness bar of any enemy. Of course, the elements matching would result in better damage outputs, but in most cases, for me at least, I just use Orica most of the time. Another thing about the weakness system is damage bonuses. Breaking an enemy's weakness and then increasing their damage bonus will result in your units doing lots of damage. I like this system because it gives every DPS a chance to shine somehow. Now, one of the biggest surprises is the improvements that they made that Star Rail didn't make. Oh, I accidentally used my ultimates at bad times. Wish I could rearrange them, or are you for real? In terms of other observations I noticed was that Magia Record's second area, and just like Madoka Magica in general, was long. Like, I mean, really, really long. There was tons to explore, with lots of story, and tons of rewards to get. They were very big. Pause. Here's another thing. Most of the enemies were easy, but Sayaka is actually difficult. If I didn't bring 2 break units on my second attempt, I might have been at a wall for a while. Which is a good thing because it tells you to experiment with other team comps. Now, one of the many unique things they did in terms of story was how you fight 3 magical girls in the second Magia Record area, and other magical girls in Madoka Magica's area. But back to the boss part of things, Walpurgisnacht was a behemoth. She did lots of damage and had a lot of tankiness to her kit. As you can see, some observations were made, so let's go over some of the positives. In terms of a good banner system, I'm mixed about it. The first limited banners they had were multi-banners, which I kind of don't like unless it's in the standard banner. But that's just a preference. We'll talk about the banner's negatives in a minute. But in terms of combat, the combat is solid. There are 5 characters you can equip, along with 5 more as support units later on. As previously mentioned too, you're able to cancel ultimates, and the animations are really good. There was a fair share of good cutscenes, especially those opening movies. The cutscenes happen at the most crucial parts of the story, and the cutscenes provide more perspective that the shows never provided. Like, for example, how with Mami, we see her perspective of becoming headless. Other than that, the 3D style was very impressive. And speaking of animations, they managed to make some of the animations look really nice. The main story sticks true to the base Madoka Magica story, which is a good thing, because if people are motivated to watch the series because of the game, you'll see that they match the events one-to-one with the story on the anime. Now, if I have to be completely honest, I thought they were pretty generous in the beginning. But every day, I swear, I hear more and more about the rewards that they plan on giving away. So, just to give you a perspective of how generous they are. The exploration is pretty easy and rewarding. From exploration, you can get things like free weapons, which are the portraits. Signature portraits are obtained through bond levels, and higher difficulties give better portraits. Now, one thing about gacha games is the skip button. It's a big controversial talk in the space. Not everyone wants to experience a story, so with that in mind, they added a skip button to every dialogue and animation. While on the topic of animation, I forgot to mention that you can pause cutscenes. Even the end credits were pausable. But back on the topic of skipping, it's not just story in general that's skippable. Literally everything is skippable. The opening title cards, level domains, transition cutscenes. Just by tapping the screen, you can pause and skip. I guess they really wanted to save some time for the players. Now, rewinding a bit to the combat part of things, the auto battle is extremely flexible. There is semi-auto, which is just them using skills and basic attacks, and full auto, which is skills and ultimates. I really do hope that in the future they tweak the auto battle so it's not just like dumping skill points and ultimates, but we'll see. Now, as per every piece of Madoka Magica media I've experienced, the music rocks. They even played one of my favorite soundtracks on a boss floor. I'm not going to say which one, you'll know when you see it. Now, as I was going through the dialogues, although there was not a ton of extra effort, the live 2D models, which I haven't seen before, and which is what I think they're called, they're pretty cool, and it adds life to the characters, especially with the voice acting. This is all the positives I have, and there are quite a few. But some of these positives have some negative aspects too. So before we continue on, please be sure to like this video and subscribe for more Gacha Gaming content. Now let's talk about the negatives. Now you remember what I said before about the banner system, right? Well, while I do think that the rates are solid, the system itself is pretty fucking odd. I mean, the new units come quick. Because, like, guys, we have 3 limited banners going on right now, like, at the time of recording this video. That is a lot. And with how this system works, you fail the 50-50, you get a limited next time. Cool. However, you really shouldn't have 2 in the banner at the same time, because you're not guaranteed to get what you want, even after you fail your 50-50. Plus, if you were going to do that, you should at least have a feature like Genshin where you could select what weapon you want. Now, listen to me guys, I hate Genshin, but its weapon banner system could possibly be a working system for the double banners in this game, with how the raids of 50-50 work. Because, come on, I mean, leaving it up to 2 chances is kind of absurd. Now, there's not many battle voice lines, and what I mean by that is how in HSR, there's 2 voice lines you can get with a character with every follow-up attack, skill, or basic attack. It's never the same voice line each time. The problem I have is that this creates lots of repetitiveness. People will get sick of hearing the same character over and over again because the voice lines don't even alternate. Now, before I make another comparison about another game, I'm just saying, like, you guys may hate these games, but the way they operate, the games could learn from each other, you know what I mean? I think if games learn from each other, it could create a better market. If that makes sense. Anyway, speaking of battle, some of the fights are extremely fucking unbalanced. Some of the areas had enemies that were harder than bosses. I went to go fight, I think it was like the Uwasa of Commander's Horse, that's what it was. And the enemies, like the sub-enemies, were harder than the boss. The only thing that the boss really did was poison my units, but even then, when it tried to damage me, or Kirika pops her shield, boom, we're fine. They need to balance it so that, like, sure, the enemies get harder over time, but the boss should be harder than the little guys. That's just how things should be. That's what makes sense. Okay, that aside, while the grinding system in this game is the best I've seen so far, being unable to select upgrade amounts is really stupid. Now, you can select level amounts, but for some things, you are not able to. Now, I'm the type of man who likes to make my units somewhat equal in power and upgrade levels, so being able to have more freedom with upgrade amount selection would be nice. Just cause, like, you know, it'd just be easier to, like, divide all my resources to my units and whatnot. Now, probably my biggest issue here is that Hitomi still exists. Now, guys, this is obviously a joke. I just had to include this. I really just don't like Hitomi. Now, something I'm not joking about, however, is how the swearing from the original series was cranked down to 0. And I know this because I watched the original series about 4 times. That is not a joke. I watched the original series 4 times. So, that's how I made that observation. If they were unable to change that due to laws or something, then whatever, that's fine. The story is still cruel and deep, so that's fine with me if the game is a little bit different, but it's just something that I personally don't like. Now, what's actually my biggest issue is how the Magi record story and the Madoka Magica story are not voiced. Now, I'm praying to God that this is a bug that they haven't fixed, and that this bug hopefully gets patched. Or, I hope that they just simply didn't record the lines yet, because I really love the Madoka Magica story. You see, some of the emotional moments are ruined in cases like this because of the fact that there's only music. Reading a book and interpreting the emotions in your own way is fine, but for a video game's main story, you should at least have the main story voiced. Like I said, there were tons of moments in the story where I can only imagine how good this would be if it was voiced. They fixed that. They will most likely hook newer players in the future. Please, if you will, please speak out about this. They have voices for the playable versions of the characters, so I don't see why they couldn't at least voice the characters in the story. Because guys, we could possibly have some of the best written Gacha Game stories on the market, and they would be even better if we convince the devs to voice these main stories. Okay, now that was a lot. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from when I say these critiques and whatnot. I don't hate the game. I'm hooked myself, and I can see the potential this game has. But it's because I see that potential that I have to admit that some things that get in the way of that potential need to be fixed. Anyways, the next thing I want to discuss is my experience with the game before I move on to the suggestions and whatnot. Now, in this game, I always go for the first learned character because that character either ends up being, in this game's case, cool, and my all-time favorite character in the Madoka Magica series, or in, for example, Zelda Zero's case, a maid. Guys, I'm very simple. Anyways, point being, every first learned unit seems to catch my eye, and Homura was no different. I loved this character in the show. I loved watching the fucking badassery and rebellion, and I knew that I had to get this character. Guys, it was only until day 9 that I finally got her. Now, I failed my 50-50, got Madoka instead, and I didn't even make it to my next 50-50 because I got her on the free pull banner. Then, I got her again on the standard Magica Key banner. What an experience. Now, as for my battle experiences, I lost to Sayaka and won shortly after because I used 2 breakers, which I think might be the meta in this game. But after that, I never lost again, because the double break team competitors are fucking nuts. Like, those double break teams are insane. Now, the game's generosity is what led me to getting what I want, because not only am I playing a good team, that team is full of characters I like. Kirika being one of the latest additions to those characters I like, because she's just awesome. So then, as you guys can see, aside from the obvious banner struggles and all the other negatives, I had a blast, and I kept logging on each day to get close to, or to do, a temple, and I was entertained nicely along the way. So let's finally move on to the last thing here, the suggestions. So first of all, the banner system that we talked about so much. Obviously, from what I've said before, I think that the banner system needs a slight rework. First of all, you either make the limited banners separate, or if you don't want to make them separate, include the ability to have an option as to what character you want to try and get, so at least if you fail your 50-50, you can still try and get something you want afterwards. But that's not the only thing that should be fixed. Polling obtainment histories and gem obtainment logs should have a separate tab as well. People should be able to see their polling history, and people should also especially be able to check how many polls they've done without scrolling through a fuck ton of obtainment logs. That's just stupid. Now, banner aside, we need a cutscene replay gallery, because some cutscenes aren't repeatable, and if you're like me who accidentally skipped a cutscene or two, you should be able to replay it. Now, I think one last suggestion I would make is that account linking should be asked about when you first start playing the game. I really, really hope that I can consistently alternate between platforms with the same exact data like in every gacha game I've ever played. Because I'm getting a bit tired of playing on my phone, you know what I mean? But other than that, that's really all I have to say. So let's move on to the closing thoughts of this video. Overall, I might have to give this game a 9.3 out of 10. It has its flaws, sure, but I see a future for this game, even if it ends up being a small game. Now, I expected this game to be a simple Madoka Magica IP game, but it has a lot more than just that aspect. There's lots of potential I can see in this game, and I hope that we as a community can keep the devs on a good road. Cause as a gacha player, I know what happens when you let dev teams do what they think is reasonable. I am excited for what this game has in store in terms of story and gameplay. But yeah, that's about it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like the video and subscribe for more Gacha Gaming content. We're trying to reach 500 subscribers, so subscribe to make that possible. Comment down below what you want to see next and check out my community tab and Discord for updates on upcoming videos. Be sure to also check out my Twitter. I shitpost, reply for your creators, and some dumbasses, so check that out as well. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!